Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, making a Japanese style carpenter's marking knife. So last week we showed a carpenter's marking knife using just the most simplistic kind of approach you can imagine. Works out fine, but it's not the most fancy knife. Today we're going to do something a little bit more advanced, a little more cool, I think. It's a more Japanese style marking knife. Ultimately, the knife will do just exactly the same thing as the real simplistic project that we did last week. But this one is going to be more complicated to make and is going to show off some pretty cool skills and give, I don't know, a nicer looking knife in the end. So last week I made a very simple carpenter's marking knife out of a lawnmower blade. Today I'll show a much more advanced project which results in a knife that does exactly the same thing. In some of my videos I walk you through every detail and give you the why as well as the how. But in this video I'm not going to give too much explanation of why I'm doing things, I'll just show you what I did. This will be my version of a Japanese style marking knife, known in Japanese as a kiridashi, or sometimes also called a kogatana. Now, it's common for Japanese blades to be made from a very high carbon steel, forge welded to a softer iron or steel body. This allows the cutting edge to be made from a very hard but relatively brittle steel without danger of the tool cracking or breaking. You can find variants of this general approach in everything from Japanese swords to sushi knives and plain blades. Alright, first, what's a marking knife? It's a blade used by carpenters and cabinet makers for scribing precise lines for things like dovetails, mortises, tenons, and so on. Marking knives generally have a single bevel and a flat back so that they hug the template you're marking from. This knife will be all metal, no handle, no bolster, no nothing, just one big chunk of knife. The cutting edge of the blade will be made from this, a steel commonly used in Japanese cutlery known as Hitachi Blue Steel No. 2. It's extremely high in carbon, low in manganese, a water-hardening steel. Now, blue steel can be hardened to around 64 on the Rockwell C scale and hones to a really nice sharp edge. The only other material I'll use is this. I had forged a large billet of Damascus which had been used for making some sword fittings, and this little stub was left over. The steel, composed of 1050 and 15 and 20, was basically just the handle that stayed in the vise as I was forming twist pattern Damascus. So it's just plain vanilla low layer count, completely unmanipulated. About as boring as Damascus gets. So I began by forging this stub out to the same width as this small piece of blue steel. Then I fluxed it up with anhydrous borax, heated it to about 2400 Fahrenheit. A few taps and it fuses into one solid block of steel. Back into the fire, then I draw it out about 6 inches long, 1/4 inch thick, and a little over 1/2 inch deep. Normally I'd use my hydraulic press to draw it out, but sometimes it's fun to just go at it with the hammer. So now the blue steel is on one side of the blade. That will be the cutting edge. Now I'll hot cut the blank to form the point. So with normal knives, I'd rough out the shape of the blade on the grinder before heat treat, but not in this case. There's just not that much else to do, so I'm going to do it all in one throw. Instead, I'll immediately heat treat it by heating it to about 1500 Fahrenheit and quenching it. I use a two-stage quench. Into water for about 2 seconds to get the steel past the perlite nose of the cooling curve, then into oil to bring it on down to martensite transformation a little bit more gently. This gets the steel nice and hard, but helps to minimize the likelihood of cracking, which often happens in a straight water quench. Then into the heat treating oven for tempering. Of course, I could have used the heat treating oven for the hardening operation, but it's always more fun to do these things with fire. After tempering, I'll finish shaping the blade, beginning by squaring everything off, then smoothing all the corners to make it comfortable in the hand. Next, I'll grind in the bevel. If I didn't have this little coolant rig, I'd have roughed it out before heat treat. But this allows me to grind a little more aggressively after the blade has been hardened without ruining the temper. I also added a little hole at the top so it can be hung on the wall. At this point, the Damascus pattern is barely discernible in the steel. To bring it out, I'll now immerse the blade in an etchant, ferric chloride. It goes in all shiny and comes out this lurid looking thing. You can get all kinds of different effects with Damascus steel depending on what kind of etchant you use, how long you immerse it, what kind of steel you use to forge the Damascus, and how you polish it when you're done. In this case, I'm going to leave it really in-your-face bold. After it comes out and I wash off the ferric, I'll just rub it a little with some 4/0 steel wool. This will tone it down slightly and remove some of the surface oxides, but it's still not exactly a shy, retiring pattern. And the section composed of blue steel, that's the hard edge, is now unmistakably visible. As the final step, I'll hone the blade on this Japanese waterstone. And there we have it, East meets West. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. To me, anytime I do a little forge welding, that's always a lot of fun, and it was a nice opportunity to test out some steel that you don't really see all that often in the American marketplace. So I think this is a pretty cool tool, and I hope you get a chance to make it for yourself. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, here are a couple of other videos that you might be interested in. Also, like me on Facebook at Walter Sorrells Blades, and check out my website, waltersorrellsblades.com, where you'll find examples of my work along with instructional videos showing all aspects of Japanese sword making, including forging and polishing, how to make hamones, and how to make fittings, scabbards, and handles for Japanese swords.